I was a romantic at heart. All I ever wanted was a man to sweep me off my feet, someone I could fall head over heels for. But it seemed extremely unlikely that I'd ever get that. I'd be lucky to even be happy in my marriage, let alone deeply in love. Dad. A bubble of emotions rose up inside me, and I was on the verge of begging him to let me out of this marriage. I always tried to ignore the emotional side of all of this. I didn't want to be an emotional wreck and come across as a spoiled princess. I was naturally cool-headed and calculating just like everyone else in my family. But anyone would feel sad to know their chance of falling in love is being taken away from them. It's time now, Millie. I want you to have your pick, and that won't happen if you get any older. Your options will become limited with time. 25 years old is a good age. Who are my options? The words tasted sour on my tongue. I was a romantic, so talking about my future husband as a business partner wasn't easy. Let's go and get some breakfast, and we'll discuss it with your brother, Nye? Yes. He stood up from his chair, coming towards me with a soft smile. I'm sure you're hungry, and in need of some coffee after your late night? This guy was mocking me and my hangover. It's not funny. I glared at him, standing to my feet. You were the one who sent that battle axe into my room so damn early in the morning. You're a psychopath. Actually, I asked your brother to wake you up. He was the one who chose to send the battle axe instead. What a little shit. I take it back, I don't love Julius. Not after the ultimate betrayal. Sending Mrs. K is like a death sentence. We made into the dining room where my mother and Julius were already waiting for us. Julius was wearing the exact same outfit I was, a hoodie and sunglasses. I told you not to get too drunk, but apparently neither of you listened to me. My father's statement was aimed at my brother, who had his head resting on the dining table. Can we just eat? Julius grumbled. You don't deserve to eat after what you did to me. You know Mrs. K hates hangovers, and you sent her to me anyway. It's not my fault you chose to get shit-faced last night, he muttered, finally filling up his plate. Are you proud of yourselves? I shifted my glare towards my parents as I ungracefully dropped down on a chair. That is the man you've raised. They both glanced over at my brother, who couldn't care less about what I was saying. He wasn't wrong, Millie. My father smiled, filling up his plate too. It was your fault, my mother added, rubbing my arm sympathetically. At least I'm not the only one who thinks you're stupid. My mouth dropped open when Mrs. K walked in, sporting an amused grin. I could fire you, you know. I glared at her from behind my sunglasses. I could fire anyone. Then why didn't you do it 25 years ago? She smirked, putting down a small dish containing the supplements I took every single morning. She also gave me the green juice she makes, which is pure magic. Only Mrs. K can make it, but this thing pretty much cures hangovers, period cramps, nausea, headaches, and the flu. I was extremely dedicated to my supplement regime. Taking regular vitamins and herbal supplements had many benefits to my energy levels, skin, and hair. But the main reason I took them was for my period cramps. My period cramps were no joke. But I was totally against ever going on birth control to reduce the pain. I wanted to have control over my body and any potential side effects. So, supplements were the way I controlled the pain. If I took them every day without fail, my period cramps were tolerable. Otherwise, well, it wasn't pretty. I took my pills while Mrs. K leaned over my shoulder to put some scrambled egg in my plate for me. She knew it was my favorite. She knew all my favorites. Oh, can I have one more hash brown, please? I gave her a grin and she laughed, adding another one to plate. Enjoy your food, Lolity Mao. My flower, she smiled, placing a hand on my arm. Thank you. I turned back to give her as much of a smile as I could muster with my hangover and the upcoming discussion about marriage. This wasn't going to be easy. You're really getting married? Damien stared at me wide-eyed, his little pink ice cream spoon halfway to his lips. Ice cream dates were our thing. Yeah. I sighed, leaning back in the plush chair at our favorite ice cream parlor in Manhattan. They always give extra sprinkles for free if you charm them in the right way. It just helps that Damien and I can be pretty charming when we want extra sprinkles. You agreed? I don't really have a choice, Damie. At least if I cooperate, I'll get some kind of say in who I marry, which is unheard of for women in my position.
Damn.
He whispered, taking a bite of his chocolate fudge ice cream. Well, do you know who you might marry? That's actually what I wanted your opinion on. I think you'll know all the candidates we talked about this morning. I took my phone out to find the notes I'd made during our early meeting this morning over breakfast. It was going to take me a long time to recover from the mental trauma of being awake so early. My plan was to research every name and gather as much intel as I could. That meant I was going to ask Damien for his opinion on each one. He's the only one who wouldn't sugarcoat it or hide anything from me. When he realized what we were about to do, my cousin grinned, rubbing his hands together. This is going to be fun. He's finding excitement in my misery. So, we decided to go around the world and list all the different organizations. I couldn't think of a better word to use in such a crowded ice cream parlor. Since we lived in New York for most of the year, I decided to start in America. The American mob is run by Dash. Leroy Augustine. He's a dick. He killed his own sister for having an affair with his best friend. Damien shook his head to object straight away. Okay, I don't need that kind of drama in my life. I deleted his name off the list before continuing. Next was Mexico. Julius said his name was Raul Herdash. Absolutely not. Any criminal gang in Mexico or anywhere in South America will use you as a fucking drug mule. Or they'll pimp you out to their closest friends and relatives. Remember when I said he wouldn't sugarcoat it? Okay. I cringed at the thought of carrying drugs in my hidden places. I deleted Raul Hernandez and all the other names from Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia. Any of the triads in China? Bitch, you don't speak Chinese. Good point. Japan? I love sushi. I grinned while he gave me a flat look. You're willing to marry a 70-year-old Japanese criminal for the sushi? So he's also off the list. Is there anyone in Australia? Australia is cool. Yeah, cool with all its freaking spiders. He grinned. Oh, hell no. I shook my head, quickly moving on from Australia. Damien laughed, knowing all about my arachnophobia. I'm that bitch that will shamelessly have a panic attack if she sees a spider. Spain? The Diaz family.
No.
Damien immediately shook his head, stuffing his mouth with more ice cream.
What? Why?
I've met them before. They're all really nice. Plus, from what I remember, Antonio is kind of cute. Antonio was the heir and future leader of the Diaz crime family. I'd met him a few times in passing, and he was definitely an 8 out of 10. But Damien didn't reply. I frowned, watching him eat another bite of his ice cream while avoiding my gaze. I knew that sheepish behavior all too well. Damien, what did you do? What makes you think I did anything? He quipped back immediately. Now he's being defensive. I know you, so spill. He took another few seconds and another bite of ice cream, then he finally confessed to his stupidity. I slept with Miguel. You slept with Miguel Diaz? I leaned forward, whisper shouting. He's the psycho brother who Dash organizes secret sex parties where people mysteriously end up dead. I know. He continued to avoid my gaze, swirling his spoon in his cup. I thought he was looking away in shame, but he was actually preparing to stun me again. I also slept with his sister. Damien, I Dash. And then his mother. Okay, so cute Antonio is off the list. I didn't want to hear anymore. He chuckled when I shook my head in disgust. My cousin slept with 3 out of 5 members of the main Diaz family. I could never unknow that. Have you slept with anyone from the Walker family in London? No, I haven't. But Lucas Walker is married, and he has a 17-year-old son who I don't think is in your age range. Anyway, you'd hate London. It's too cold. We live in New York. I pointed out with a laugh. And we spend the winters in Athens, honey. London is too cold for you, and it's not exotic enough. You won't fit in with that gorgeous skin tone. I rolled my eyes, trying to hide my smile as I took a bite of my mango ice cream. Damien was always the one who couldn't handle the cold in New York. But he always blamed me to save face. Apparently, it's not good for the future underboss of the Greek Mafia to be scared of the cold.
France?
Louis F.A. Dash. Convicted rapist. Off the list you go, Louis. And hopefully off to prison. Netherlands? The Vries family is nice, right? They traffic women. Piss your husband off, and we'll never see you again. I have a knack for pissing people off. I'll cross him off the list too. Denmark. Married, no sons. Switzerland. That guy is ugly as foo dash. Don't be mean. I glared at him, deleting another name off my list. I might have told Damien not to be mean, but we had a very similar taste in men. I need someone I find attractive, and I trusted Damien's judgment. Serb dash. Say that word, and I'll send you to Australia to live with the spiders. His eyes suddenly went from humorous and playful to cold and angry in a split second. I was used to the mood swings when it came to mafia men and their business, but that didn't mean I liked it. They'd been especially touchy about the Serbian Mafia recently, sometimes unnecessarily. Okay. I shifted uncomfortably under his gaze, deleting the Serbian leader off my list. Russia. I moved on to the next name with a tentative murmur, taking another bite of my ice cream. Damien hesitated before he spoke. Shit, Maleficent, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. Since the bitch called me Maleficent, I refused to look at him, and he tried again. You just need to understand that when it comes to business, tempers flare, and we can get a little mean. We're at war with the Serbs, you know that. Still no reply. You want some of my ice cream? He slid the chocolate fudge brownie ice cream towards me, and I felt my resolve weaken. Fine. I snatched his ice cream from him, sliding mine towards him. We always swap a couple of times. It's just a thing we do. So, Russia? I huffed, having had enough of this conversation. Viktor Kozlov, he's a little scary for you, but he's not a bad guy. He's a few years older than you, if I'm correct. Maybe 33 years old or something like that. He's had an on-again, off-again relationship with some woman for the last decade. But from what I know, he's been single for a while, so he'll probably agree to the marriage. Only an 8-year gap. That works? Do you think he's a good option? I suddenly felt uncomfortable and shy at the thought of meeting any of these men for the purpose of marriage. I've met some of them in passing, but meetings for marriage are so different. They often become public news very quickly if new alliances are being formed. They're also very political and business-focused. Let's just say, your personal comparability is rarely ever considered. Yes, I think so. He doesn't have a wife, he's in your age range, and he doesn't traffic women. We have a good relationship with the Russians too. Your father would be happy with this one. I nodded, leaving Viktor Kozlov on my list. That just left the last name. The Accardi family in Sicily? I took a bite of the chocolate ice cream, waiting for his reaction. But it wasn't a reaction I expected. This bitch laughed at me. What's so funny? You said it as if the Accardi family would want you. He laughed, his dimples showing. What's wrong with me? I frowned. You're you. He gestured at me as if I myself was Exhibit A in his argument. I caught my reflection in the window of the ice cream parlor, and I winced. I was sitting there in my hangover outfit consisting of my oversized men's hoodie, leggings, and sunglasses. My face was bare of makeup, and my hair, frizzy from this morning's shower, was thrown up into a bun. I screamed. I'm hungover going through a mid-20s crisis. Damien was right, but I decided to go on the defensive instead of agreeing that I'm a hot mess. So, you think I'm not good enough for them? He laughed again, not taking my offended tone very seriously. They're a classic mafia family, mildew. They don't like outsiders. They don't treat anyone who isn't an Accardi with respect, unless you've earned it. They're Sicilian royalty, and they don't take anyone's shit. People who don't share their blood have to earn their respect? They don't sound like royalty, they just sound arrogant as fuck. I shook my head in aversion. The last thing I want is to be stuck married to a narcissistic, arrogant, pompous son of a dash.
Yeah, okay.
Damien cut me off with a laugh, clearly seeing the signs of my impending rant. I'm serious. They sound obnoxious. I could never be married to someone like that. Don't judge until you've met them, Mildred. Acosta and his brothers are alright once you get to know them. Well, they're alright for a bunch of murderous criminals. He shrugged, taking another bite of my mango ice cream. Costantino Accardi. He's the heir to the Sicilian Mafia. Even his name sounded pretentious. Okay, maybe I was just still sore from my encounter with Italian Dick last night. Costantino does have a nice name. But if he's anything like that guy I met last night, then I'd never even want to meet him, let alone marry him. As far as alliances go, the Sicilian Mafia is a hell of a good one. They control most of Italy and the Mediterranean region. Your father would prefer it over the Russians for sure. It sounded like this would be the jackpot for my father. But after last night, I've had enough of Italian men to last me a lifetime. Do you think Costantino would agree to the marriage? In this life, there was no such thing as romance and love marriages. It was always a business alliance. If love came after then, that was just a bonus. Damien hesitated, something I picked up on instantly. I knew how to read people, and my cousin, for me, was the easiest to read. What? Costa? He has a bit of a reputation for being a player. He's never expressed any interest in settling down. He's known to screw around a lot. So, while I've been forced to stay a virgin for 25 years, he's screwed whoever the hell he wanted nigh. Yes, my cousin finished my sentence, sliding my mango ice cream back over to me. Distaste filled me immediately. The last thing I needed was a man whore of a husband. I know men in his position would most likely have a large body count, but at least the Russian guy didn't have a reputation for it. It was an unspoken rule in this life that a woman of my status must remain a virgin until she gets married. It's the right of her husband to have a virgin on his wedding night, an archaic tradition which I abhor. I've never been one to keep my mouth shut about how much I despise this rule. But I can't do anything to change the way the organized crime world has worked for centuries. What about the rest of the Accardi family? Are they nice? Costa's father is very strict and traditional. I think their conservative values are stronger than most because their organization goes back centuries. I'm not sure they'd treat you the same way we do. You have a lot of freedom here to go out and do whatever you want. You have your own company and your own income. I'm not sure they'd afford you the same luxuries. Damien clearly liked the Accardi family, but he was also being honest with me. His uncertainty was a definite red flag. He knew me better than most, and he knew if I'd fit in or not. I trusted him with my life. We'll go with Viktor Kozlov for now. Dad said there's a gala in 3 weeks that we can go to. He said a lot of these guys are going to be there. I felt uneasy at the thought of having to attend any of these kind of galas. Knowing I was there for marriage purposes just didn't sit well with me. It would be like being a zoo attraction with so many eyes and ears on us, as at all times. Don't worry, Millie. We'll get you prepared for the ball. I'll teach you as much as you need to know about everyone, especially Kozlov. We'll buy you a nice dress, and we'll make sure you get your first choice. We can even teach you how to dance, because after what I saw last night, you definitely need it. Damien grinned, clearly stepping into the position of Millie's fairy god cousin. That's exactly what ended up happening. Over the next 3 weeks, they taught me all I needed to know about some of my potential marriage prospects. Most of my lessons focused on Viktor Kozlov's Russian bratva. By the time the gala came around 3 weeks after my birthday party, I was ready. Nervous as hell, but ready. What do you think? I smiled at Mama as I descended down the last step and into the entry hall. Oh, darling, I love it. You look stunning. Her eyes traveled over my dress and my accessories, but then lingered on my leg. But I think it might give your brother a heart a dash. Oh, hell no. Julius suddenly appeared in the entry hall dressed in his 3-piece suit, his eyes glued to my exposed leg. Pigane Kylax. Go and change.
Okay.
I chose this dress, and I'm wearing it. No, I would have chosen the dress with 2 slits, but unfortunately, I had to cover the knife strap to my right thigh. Not tonight, you're not. You can wear it wherever the hell else you want, the supermarket, the gas station, the shower. Just not tonight. So, I can wear a $3,000 dress to the gas station where I might get mugged, but I can't wear it to an upper-class gala? I frowned, trying to understand my brother's screwed-up logic. Just take your security team, then you won't get mugged. He quipped back his answer as he grabbed my hand, attempting to drag me back towards the stairs. Almost immediately, I yanked my hand out of his grasp. He would never hold me tight enough to hurt me, so it wasn't that hard of a task. To Ferreo. I'm wearing it. Okay, den I sigh. No, you're not. Yes, I am. Fine. Let's see what Dad has to say. My brother was confident because he knew my father wouldn't appreciate my dress choice. My instructions for the dress were classy, sophisticated, and no skin. It's like the man wanted me to dress as a freaking nun. Fine, let's see. I stormed out before he could stop me. Unfortunately, I sat in the same car as him, so I had to listen to a lecture for the next half an hour. He rattled on about drawing too much attention to myself and catching the eye of the wrong kinds of men. He was talking as if I couldn't protect myself. I knew self-defense, I had a knife strapped to my thigh, and this gala was going to be crawling with security. And if those two things didn't help, then my brother and cousin glued to my freaking side would do the trick. Damien had come out to meet us at the car while my mother's security detail escorted her straight inside to my father. You know I'm a big girl, right? I muttered to my two bodyguards as we entered into the large ballroom. Shut up and act like one then, Maleficent. It was my brother who threw back a snarky reply while Damien only chuckled to himself. Instead of arguing with my bitch of a brother, I chose to take in my surroundings instead. The ballroom itself was grand as hell, but it was the guests that really caught my attention. They were all dressed in the most expensive clothes and accessories. Bottles of the best champagne were being carted around by the servers along with finger foods. I could feel eyes on us the moment we walked in, but I couldn't quite determine the emotions behind those stares. Hatred, lust, admiration, jealousy, curiosity. It could have been any of them. After all, they were all criminals of the same underworld that my family belonged to. Everyone here knew each other, unless they only occasionally attended these gatherings like me. I think at least half of the criminals on the list Damien and I went through were in attendance. As we walked through the ballroom towards my father, a few other guests nodded towards my brother and cousin in acknowledgement. I'm sure I saw some women giving me dirty looks after they checked out my cousin and my brother. Do they really think I'm here with them as a freaking date? EW. Dad. At the sound of my voice, my father ceased his conversation with my uncle to greet us.
Agapitemo.
My darling. He smiled when his eyes landed on my face. Then, as his gaze lowered down my body, his smile quickly faded. I thought we agreed no skin. What's this? You let her wear this? My father turned his attention towards my brother, who was scowling at me. You know she doesn't listen to me. My brother shifted the blame towards me. But my mother was quick to defend me. Her dress isn't that bad. She even has a sleeve. Having a sleeve was quite an achievement considering the sleeveless dresses other women here were wearing. They were showing off everything God gave them. Although that was the kind of dress I wanted too, I think I would have truly killed my overprotective male family members if they saw it. But at least the dress would have been black, so I could wear it to their funerals. Well, I think you look beautiful, Agapite Mao. My dear, my uncle, Damien's father, gave me a genuine smile. You're going to blow away your future husband. This could truly be the first time I meet the man who I'll be chained to for the rest of my life. Underneath my $3,000 dress, perfect makeup, and unnecessary amount of perfume, I was nervous as hell. Isn't it better that we do this in private? Why does the first meeting have to be so public? A public setting is the best way to make a statement. You've gone for one of the most feared leaders in Europe, if not the world. When people see you talking, they'll know it's for marriage. And that's a good thing? Everyone here will know all about my personal life. I gave my uncle an incredulous look and he laughed. Yes, it's good. It will allow time for any other suitors to request an opportunity to meet you. Word will get around, and people will know you're serious about marriage. This whole thing is nauseating. I just wanted a quickie wedding. I don't need the entire criminal underworld knowing I'm for sale. You're not for sale. Julia scoffed. Don't be ridiculous, Maleficent. It's a deal. You get a good marriage, and he forms an alliance with us.
5.
Well, you'll handle the business talk with him, right? I don't think I'm prepared well enough for it. They taught me everything, but I just didn't feel confident enough to talk business with the leader of the Russian Bratva. I was more concerned about how this was going to affect me, not the other way around.
Yes.
Just relax, Mildred. It's going to be fine. Here, have a drink. My brother's eyes caught onto a server approaching us. As soon as my eyes landed on the crystal glass filled with champagne, I'm sure hearts appeared in my eyes.
No.
And my father was the one to rain on my parade. You're not here to drink, Millicent. You're here for business. Business. I grumbled. Don't you think I could do with a glass of Dutch courage before I come face to face with the love of my life for the first time? Ah, you're really getting into this marriage thing, I see. My father smirked, clearly choosing to ignore my obvious attempt at sarcasm. Just one glass. I pleaded, but the old man was sticking to his guns.
No.
You're here for work. The same rules apply to you as they do to the boys. He nodded towards Julius and Damien, who suddenly seemed more interested in looking anywhere but my father. What do you mean? They always come home drunk after these events. I feigned confusion, biting back a smirk when their heads snapped in my direction. You little dash, Julius's insult was cut off by my father. Is that so? It's after we finish, Dad. Once we've talked to everyone and dealt with any business that needs handling, then we have a couple of drinks to end the night. He shrugged casually, although his eyes gave away how he felt. He was nervous under my father's scrutinizing stare, and he was furious at me for throwing him under the bus. I guess it was kind of a bitchy thing to do, since he sobered me up at my birthday party before bringing me home. But he deserved it for the dress fiasco. No alcohol tonight for any of you. My father glared at the three of us, as if we were reckless teenagers. In fact, Damien was 29, Julius was 30, and I was now 25 years old. We didn't get the chance to argue anyway. Soon, an older couple with distinct Irish accents came to speak to my father. For the next 20 minutes, we had to stand there and maintain our sophisticated reputation. At every chance I got, my eyes were scouring the room, taking note of who was here. I could see the Walker crime family from London. I could see the Japanese leader and some South American criminals too. Then I recognized the Diaz family from Spain across the room. Damien had slept with the psycho brother, the sister, and then the mother. Is he looking? My cousin leaned in to whisper to me. My eyes remained glued to the top back of the tall Spanish psycho.
No.
He's talking to his sister, you know, the one you slept with. I whispered back, bringing my glass of water to my lips. Yes, water. How embarrassing. Have you seen her ass, Mildred? I couldn't help it. I could just hear that smug grin as he whispered in my ear. You won't be saying that when Psycho Miguel Diaz finds out you did both his mother and his sister after sleeping with him. He'll come for you, Damien. Let the bitch try. He wouldn't stand a chance. If anything, it would be some hot foreplay. You're disgusting. I shook my head, shifting my eyes away from the Miguel family. You're only saying that because you're a virgin. The day you lose it, you'll be coming to me to gossip all about it like a giggly schoolgirl. He's only saying that because I don't have any girlfriends close enough to gossip with. Sure, I had a few, and Zari was my newest addition. But they weren't close enough to know too much about my life and the Mafia. Damien was the only one closest to know everything, but more like a friend than a brother. Lord knows I could never gossip about sex with Julius. I wouldn't act like a schoolgirl. I muttered, finally taking a step away from him so he couldn't whisper anything else. If he said one more thing, I think I might have started a fight with him and got us kicked out. For once it would be me getting us kicked out of places and not Damien. There he is, the love of your life. Julius nudged my arm, nodding towards the main doors. I turned around just in time to see a large entourage of men coming through the door. Most of them were very obviously just security guards. They were all rather pale in comparison to some of the other criminals in the room. As they came inside the ballroom in a fashionably late manner, the main leader of the Russian Bratva emerged from the crowd. It was my first time laying eyes on him, and I was pleasantly impressed. He was tall, lean, and intimidating. He had blonde hair and deep blue eyes and rugged features to suit his dark personality. He carried himself with authority, but he wasn't as unapproachable as most of the criminals in the room. You like? Damien's question had my parents, my brother, and my uncle eagerly awaiting an answer. He's okay. I murmured, studying the man as he walked in with, who I'm assuming were his right-hand men. She likes him. This is the match of the century. My father grinned, apparently taking my guarded answer as a declaration of love. Calm down, Cupid. I need to talk to him first. I turned back around to face him, putting my back to the door and the Russian criminal. Well, it's a good thing he's coming over then, isn't it? Julius hid his smirk behind his glass, eyeing someone behind me. My eyes widened, but I didn't get the time to compose myself before a velvety, yet rough voice spoke behind me. Mr. Darmos, it's nice to see you again. He was so freaking close. My entire body stilled, and I kept my eyes on my father, who was now looking at the Russian crime boss right behind me. You too, Victor. Thank you for coming tonight. I know you said New York was a bit out of your way. Well, it's not every day you're summoned to an event under such special circumstances. This is my daughter, Millicent. Millicent, this is Victor Kozlov. Say hello. My father smiled, sounding like a freaking parent introducing his toddler to a... It's nice to meet you, Millicent. My name sounded cool in a Russian accent. Focus, Millie. I finally turned around, coming face to face with an amused Russian criminal. He had two men behind him who also seemed rather amused at the whole situation. I mean, I wasn't exactly standing in a good place. I had my back to him the whole time. Most people would have stepped aside and let him into our circle in the ballroom just to be polite.
1.
Hi. I breathed out. Then he rose an eyebrow at me, and I realized I got the response wrong. Oh, it's nice to meet you too. This is why I don't come to these events. When I get flustered, I get flustered. It's not good for my reputation as a respectable publisher. Victor greeted my mother and my uncle first out of respect before turning his attention to my brother and cousin, Julius, Damien. He nodded at them, and from the lack of tension, I could tell they definitely got on business-wise at least. How have you been, Victor? It's been a while. Damien questioned him, coming off friendlier than I expected. If they really do have a good relationship, that will be good for me, right? Perhaps I can bounce between living with both families? If Victor isn't a control freak. Busy. Victor breathed out a laugh. We just flew in from Lisbon a couple of hours ago. I have the runway booked for midnight tonight to head to Paris. Well, I thank you for coming. I hope it's not a burden. My father smiled, sipping on his champagne. Of course not. I have some business to take care of later anyway. He smiled at my father before turning his attention back to me. Would you like to get a drink with me? I'm not staying for the evening. I have other commitments. What, and now? Smooth, real smooth. Yes. He definitely bit back a laugh at my shock. I looked like a freaking fish out of water. I thought I had some more time before I would be forced to have a one-to-one conversation with him. Oh yeah, okay. I nodded, already planning to give myself an internal pep talk on the way. He took the empty glass I was holding, handing it to one of the guys he was with. Then he took my hand, leading me away from my rather amused family. I definitely turned back to glare at every single one of those traitors. As Victor walked through the ballroom, the crowds easily parted for him. I could see his security details watching his every move from the edges of the room. Some of them even eyed me with caution, as if I was going to take my shoe off and stab him in the neck with my Louboutin heel. I'd never waste such a beautiful shoe like that. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes as we approached the bar. I knew there were a lot of eyes on us at that moment. Most likely everyone knew what kind of conversation we were having. Victor stopped at the bar, turning to smile at me. What would you like? A margarita, please. Screw Papa Darmos's rules. He put me in this position. Victor ordered my margarita and a whiskey for himself before giving me his full attention. So, you're looking to get married? Wow, these Russians are forward as hell. You could say that. I nodded, shifting my gaze away from his piercing blue eyes. My father has always been clear what my role is in our organization, and now it's time I fulfill it. And you requested to meet me? My cousin recommended you. You were the least problematic candidate out of all my options. I turned to give him a small smile, suddenly becoming nervous under his intense stare. Now that I was away from my family, he was trying to figure me out. I guess he had every reason to be concerned by my motives. It's probably not every day he gets approached for marriage talks. Problematic. The rest aren't right for me, or are a little psycho. I couldn't think of a better word to describe the criminals around us. Rapists, human traffickers, pimps, and secret sex party organizers. My father has a good relationship with you, Oswell. I'm led to believe it would be mutually beneficial. If it wasn't, surely you wouldn't have flown into New York just for one evening. Victor eyed me, raising an eyebrow as he leaned against the bar. And what do you think I would get out of it? This is exactly what marriage talks were like. There were no questions about future plans and how many children one might desire. It was about what each party could get out of it. Maybe you're hoping for reduced prices on our products? I already have a decent deal with your father. Try something else. He shut me down immediately, so I suggested the next thing up my sleeve. These were my bargaining tools that Julius taught me. Free use of our shipping routes. We have secure routes linking Asia and Europe, which we charge hefty amounts to anyone who wishes to use them. There are very few checkpoints and border controls that we need to worry about. Your work across both continents will benefit with our routes. He seemed to consider it for a moment, but it wasn't enough. For a few seconds he observed the room, although I was sure he was thinking about the deal I was proposing. A lifetime commitment to a Greek princess for free shipping routes. That's not worth flying to New York for one evening for. His eyes held a sense of mockery, almost as if he was suggesting free shipping routes weren't worth the trouble of marrying me. He was toying with me, but I had to try something else. Perhaps I was too stubborn to go back to my father to ask him to negotiate on my behalf. You will have a strong ally in the Mediterranean region. I understand you've been having issues with the Turks and the Sicilian Mafia. If you form an alliance with us, you'll have Greece in your pocket. Lyubov, I don't need to marry you to form an alliance with your father. Love. I knew very little Russian, but I knew what that meant, and I knew what he was doing. He was reminding me of my place. If I wanted stability in the Mediterranean, I would have done something a long time ago. It just so happens that chaos in that region works better for me. But, of course, a marriage to the leader of the Russian Bratva would definitely strengthen your family. That's a plus for you, but not for me. So, I'll ask again, what would I get out of it? This time I was stumped and a little embarrassed that I'd messed up already. He was intimidating as hell and left no room for error. He didn't like his time being wasted. I could see that already. It's moments like these I'm glad my father kept me away from the men of this world. If Damien had recommended Victor as one of the best out of my list, I can't imagine what the worst were like. How about you just tell me what you want? I'm sure a man like you has a list of demands. Like I said, you wouldn't be here if there wasn't something in it for you. Well, now that you so kindly ask, he teased, reaching out to pick up his whiskey when the bartender set it down. I need an heir. As soon as we are married, you will have my son. My margarita almost slipped out of my hands. I was that shocked. Why you? I'm sorry, your accent is a little funny, so I must have misunderstood. Did you just say dash? Relax, I'm just kidding. He laughed, completely at ease. Well, not entirely. I will need an heir eventually, but there's no rush. He smiled, sipping on his whiskey with no worry in the world. Meanwhile, I was ready to have a heart attack. I sipped on my margarita under his amused gaze. Just cut to the chase, Victor. What do you really want out of it? My flat tone indicated I wasn't in the mood for any more games. I'm sure anyone would have been killed for using a tone like that with him, but he couldn't exactly kill his potential future wife. So he finally nodded, his smile being replaced with a serious expression. What I will get out of this marriage is my business. But yes, you're right, I do have my reasons for engaging in talks with you. But from you, I need a wife who I can trust. You'll have to give me all your loyalty. The Russian Bratva will become your family and your only family. So, I guess he wasn't nice enough to let me bounce between my family and his. A girl could dream, I guess. I thought that was a standard obligation in any marriage deal. I frowned. It is, but it's not always easy to live out. It's not uncommon for a woman to get trapped between two lives, her new life and her old life. My wife has to be strong enough to leave her old life behind. I won't tolerate weakness. So that's all you want? You just want me to assure you that my loyalty won't be an issue? Oh no. I will be sure to discuss your enticing offer of free shipping with your father. He smirked at the way I narrowed my eyes at his joke. If you agree to my request, we can continue our talks. I did have to think about it, even if I didn't have much choice in the matter. The moment I said yes, I couldn't go back on it. Unless a major issue arose and the agreement fell through, I was essentially signing myself and my life away to Viktor Kozlov on the spot. But I knew he was still my best option. Although he was joking earlier, it wasn't uncommon for a man to demand an heir from his wife. If I married anyone else, they might actually demand we keep trying for children until I finally give him a son. That kind of life was what I wanted to avoid at all costs. I agree. My loyalty will be with you, and only you. Excellent. He smiled, knocking back the rest of his whiskey. He put the glass down, signaling the bartender to bring the same again. Would you like another? I was still nursing my first drink, so I politely declined. You're not a big drinker? He smiled, finally asking me a personal question. I am, actually. I laughed. But I'm here for work. My father knows what we get like when we drink, so he's put us on an alcohol ban tonight. So, you're going to get in trouble now? He grinned as if he liked the idea of getting me in trouble. As you said earlier, I'm a princess. I don't get in trouble. I smirked, completely lying through my teeth. If my father found out I drank this margarita, he'd have me woken up by Mrs. K every morning for the rest of my unmarried life. So you like getting your way? He's asking me if I'm going to be arguing with him throughout our marriage. Of course I do. You know we'll need to fix that, right? In this marriage, what I say goes. He had a light smile, but I didn't miss the edge to his tone. He wasn't joking. Good luck with that. I smiled, sipping on my margarita. Surprisingly, Viktor chuckled, picking up his second whiskey. I'm sorry I can't stay long. Do you have any important questions for me? He leaned against the edge of the bar, facing me. The position gave him a good vantage point of the rest of the ballroom and the criminal guests of the underworld. A lot. But I had to sift through them to find the most important. It wasn't uncommon for crime bosses to reside outside of their home country. My father runs the Greek Mafia, but we mainly live in New York. I'm sure the Irish mob also work out of New York too, and the Sicilians. Perhaps he might be living somewhere warm and exotic like the Maldives or Bali. Where do you live? Please don't say Russia. Please don't say Russia. Please don't say Russia. He grinned, and I suddenly wanted to smack someone. A whole new language, cold weather, angry people, Russian food. I've never eaten Russian food. Do they have sushi there? I frowned and he laughed. It's Moscow, not Siberia. They have everything, Lyubov. Love. So, hypothetically, we'll be living in your house in Moscow. Do you live alone?
Duh.
Yes, he nodded. But you travel a lot? He nodded again, and I did my best to keep my expression neutral. I was used to living in a bustling house. Now I was going to be living on my own for long periods of time in a foreign country. Well, I own my own publishing company, so that can keep me busy, I guess. I stated proudly, but he immediately shut me down.
No.
You can't work. But dash. I can't afford to let you work somewhere else, even if it's your own company, and the Bratva is for men only. Working is an unnecessary risk to your safety. Women stay home. I was usually so confident when I argued back, but for the first time in a long time, I felt too intimidated to even try. The look Viktor gave me was unexplainable. He was daring me to argue, but also warning me not to. So, I didn't. Okay. I nodded, averting my gaze towards my drink. I knew I'd have to rethink this whole thing since the future of my company was now in jeopardy. But I also knew my father wouldn't accept me choosing my company over this marriage alliance, or any marriage alliance for that matter. This is how things are in this world, Millicent. You might not be used to it, but you need to get used to it, and quickly. I'll give you a word of advice. He knocked back the last of his drink, putting the glass down on the counter. Lower your expectations, for your own sake. These rules might be a shock, especially since I'm the first one you've spoken to, but other men are much worse than me. I have rules, yes, just like every other organization. But I would never abuse you physically or emotionally. I'd never force you into anything you don't want to do. If you're too picky, you're going to find yourself in trouble, Millicent. I wasn't being picky. I shook my head with a frown, feeling defensive. I just love my work. I started it myself and I've grown it for 4 years. I put my all into it. Plus, I don't like the thought of being stuck at home. I want to earn my own money. I hate the thought of a man paying for my things or anyone ever thinking I'm in this marriage for your money, because I'm not. I felt a strong need to clarify that I wasn't a gold digger or a spoilt mafia princess looking for a rich husband. Surprisingly, Victor gave me a soft smile when I explained myself. He seemed understanding, which was a plus. I know, and I respect that. But it won't change the reality. I'm just warning you if you decide to look elsewhere for marriage. You have every right to consider other options, but I don't want you to get hurt. You're a nice girl, and this world, it's a cruel place. I forced a small smile onto my face as he stepped in closer to me. If you want to talk again, just let your father know. I'm sorry this was rushed and not the most pleasant discussion. It just makes sense to do this part first. If you want, next time we can dance and talk about favorite colors and foods and biggest fears. My smile became genuine when he leaned in to press a soft kiss to my cheek. I'll see you soon, Millicent. Millie. I smiled as he pulled back, his deep blue eyes meeting mine. Millie. He repeated. I'll be back in New York in a few weeks. I hope to see you again. He flashed me one last smile before he left to go back over to his security guards. As soon as he was out of sight, I released a deep, shaky breath. I turned back to the bar, ordering myself another margarita. I needed the alcohol after that slap from reality. It was like someone threw a bucket of ice water over me, or the whole freaking Pacific Ocean. My reality became clear in those few minutes while talking to Victor. I was going to end up as someone's wife in a strange country, away from my family and my home. I was going to lose the business I worked so hard to build. I would have limited contact with my family, and I couldn't have any loyalty to them anymore. They wouldn't be mine anymore. They'd just be known as the Greeks. I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this. But I didn't have a choice. It was my duty to the family. I was midway through my margarita when I felt two people come up next to me. I kept my eyes on the glass, refusing to face either of them. You okay? Julius leaned in closer to me. I nodded, barely able to form a sentence. I was trying so hard to keep my emotions under control for the sole reason that we were in public. Shit just got real, huh?
Yeah.
I nodded, sucking in a breath when tears filled my eyes. Don't cry, Mildred. Not here. Damien pressed a kiss to my cheek, placing a comforting hand over my own on the surface of the bar. The three of us stood there facing the bar while I finished my margarita, wallowing in the emotions I was so overwhelmed by. Third person's POV. News just came in from New York from that gala on Friday night. Viktor Kozlov is making moves to court the daughter of Nicholas Darmos for marriage.
6.
On receiving the news, Aiden sighed, leaning back in his leather armchair as he sucked on a Twizzler. A movie continued to play in the background of the office as he eyed Luca at the door. Luca was the enforcer in the Sicilian Mafia. He was the closest member to the three notorious Accardi brothers. You can leave now. Aiden's dismissal had Luca frowning. He didn't take orders from teenagers. Unfortunately, he did take orders from the Don who left these two imbeciles in charge. So he left obediently. As soon as the door closed, Aiden turned to his twin brother. That bitch is making a nuisance of himself. Aiden eyed his twin brother, Giovanni. The two of them were the younger cousins of the Accardi brothers and sister. They were 18 years old, but Aiden was older by 5 minutes. Who cares, bro? His girlfriend broke up with him, and he's going through an emotional crisis.
What?
Aiden frowned in confusion while staring at Giovanni.
Luca.
You said he's becoming a nuisance. Gio pointed out with a flat tone, keeping one eye on the TV.
What?
No, not Luca, idiot. Kozlov. Oh, Kozlov. Giovanni murmured. I understand now. Costa left us in charge, Gio. What do we do? Costantino didn't really leave them in charge. It was actually his father, the current Don of the Sicilian Mafia, who insisted the twins be given some kind of responsibility while Costa was gone. The Don overruled Costantino, the future heir and current underboss. So his word was final. The twins would be given some responsibility in his absence. The two of them sat in their cousin's office, watching Black Panther, playing on the flat-screen TV. Costantino had only left earlier that afternoon on a business trip, but they had already made themselves comfortable in his office. So, Kozlov wants to marry some Greek whore. What's that got to do with Costa or La Famiglia? Gio shrugged, dipping his own Twizzler in a Coca-Cola can. What if Costa would be worried? Kozlov always has a reason for his decisions. He's planning something he has to be. Aiden's suggestion had Gio frowning as he pulled out the cola-soaked Twizzler. Like what? Gio questioned. I don't know, but it won't be good for us. We've been fighting off Russian influence across Europe for years. If Kozlov allies with the Greeks, he'll have all their allies too. He'll also have a footing in the Mediterranean, which is too close to us. Aiden was always the more cautious and forward-thinking twin. On the other hand, Giovanni was more relaxed and easygoing. So, what do we do, Aiden? Costantino will be back in a few weeks. If he thinks we should have done something, he'll kick our asses. Gio was also the one who panics after realizing he should have done something instead of being so relaxed. We need to ruin it. He'll be happy if we ruin it. Aiden made his suggestion, now watching the battle taking place on the TV screen. Or, he could be pissed. Like, double pissed. If he's pissed, we'll blame Lula. On cue, the little cat meowed, baring her teeth at the eldest twin in a threatening stance. Aiden glared back at the cat, who soon rested back down on the floor of Costantino's office. It was Costantino's mother's cat. Other than Rosa Accardi, the only person Lula ever liked was Costa. Remember what Costa always says, get rid of the target before it becomes a problem. Aiden repeated the words that he'd been taught by his eldest cousin and the future Don of the Sicilian Mafia. We can't kill Nicholas Darmos' daughter, idiot. Then we'll start a war with the Greek Mafia. Gio scoffed, biting the Twizzler as he watched the movie. Costa will sure as shit kill us if we start a war before he's even arrived in Asia. Their cousin's flight only took off a couple of hours ago, and they were already one decision away from bringing down the entire Sicilian Mafia. Okay, fine. We won't kill his daughter. But we need to stop the wedding. Aiden's comment had the two of them pondering for a moment before they came to their decision. Let's play anti-Cupid, little bro. Aiden smirked at Gio, who only glared back at the mention of their age gap. 5 minutes. Tell him, Lula, it was only 5 minutes. Once again, at the mention of her name, Lula sneered at the two Accardi twins. 3 weeks later. You like that, huh? I murmured lowly, watching her lick. Good girl. She loves praise. Does it taste good? Her eyes met mine, but she didn't respond. Her tongue darted out, and she just continued to lick, as if her life depended on it. It's good because it's coming from me, right? No one else can give it to you like I can. I smirked, but she didn't reply. She was too busy. The packet says it's mesmerizing. Is it mesmerizing? Finally, I got a meow, but she barely glanced up from the pouch I was holding to her mouth. Finalmente ti ha fatto mangiare, quindi deve essere buono. It's finally got you eating, so it must be good. I smiled, stroking her gray fur as she licked the puree coming out the little opening. I was kneeling next to her on the floor in the kitchen when footsteps coming down the hallway startled her. Sho, Lula.
Va tutto bene? Mangia il tuo cibo.
It's okay, eat your food. My soft tone seemed to calm her, and she moved in closer, licking the puree again. Is she okay? I turned to look at my brother, who was watching Lula with a frown. Tristano loved Lula as much as I did, even if Lula hated him. Lula hated everyone, except for me. She's finally eating, it's a good thing. Are you sure? You think she needs to see the vet? I can call Dash.
No.
She's okay. She's doing good. I stroked her fur, squeezing the last of the puree out of the pouch. She'll need another pouch soon, but one for now is good enough. As soon as it finished, she licked around her mouth and then came in closer to me. She rubbed her head against my leg with a soft purr. It was her favorite way of expressing her affection.
Vuoi venire a lavorare con me? Abbiamo dei cattivi da uccidere.
You want to come and work with me? We've got some bad guys to kill. I smiled down at her as she purred. Lula loves it when the bad guys die.
Potrei uccidere anche I tuoi zii oggi.
Li odi, vero? I might be killing your uncles today, too. You hate them, right?
She meowed, and I took that as a yes.
Tristano laughed as I lifted her up into my arms, tossing the pouch in the trash. She hissed as we passed by my younger brother, her light brown eyes locking onto him. What's her problem, man? He huffed in frustration. He just wanted some Lula love. She's told you before. You're ugly. As the eldest, I definitely got the best genes. Tristano came second, so I guess he got whatever was left over after me. Rocco, our youngest brother, he's just ugly as hell. Nothing good was left for him. I'm prettier than you, Costa.
See?
Lula doesn't think so. Yeah. We both looked down at Lula, who definitely wasn't impressed. She hissed again, before curling up against my chest. I headed down the familiar hallway and back into my office after being away for 3 weeks. Touring was always great, but being away from home was becoming harder as I got older. I had more responsibilities here, even if my father insisted that I still go away to handle business. This time, I went with my 2 brothers. They were the closest people to me in the world. I also have a sister. Tristano is 26 years old. He's the most sensible of all my siblings. He's serious about his work since he'll be my underboss when I take over. Then there's Riviera. She's Tristano's twin, so she's also 26 years old. Riviera is the kind of person that could drive you crazy just with a single sentence. I can't count the number of times I've regretted entering a room that she's already in. My sister was married to the heir of a Portuguese cartel, so we hardly see her now that she lives in Lisbon. She also has a 2-year-old daughter. I love my niece, but damn is she terrifying. Then there's Rocco, who is 23 years old. There's no words to describe him. The simplest way to put it is, if I had a child, my child would be the one babysitting Rocco. At 28 years old, I'm the eldest, the current underboss, and future heir to the Sicilian Mafia. Dealing with my siblings is enough for me, but my father also insists that my younger cousins should be involved in the daily running of La Famiglia. The twins were only 18 years old. But usually by that age, anyone who has a future position in the inner circle would already be preparing. Since they're my cousins, they're supposed to be working closely with me when I take over. But I might kill them before that time ever comes. Aiden was the elder twin by 5 minutes, and he never lets anyone forget it. He'll probably still be reminding Giovanni of that fact even when the 2 of them are 90 years old in a care home in southern Argentina. If there are any viable suggestions located further away than southern Argentina, I'm welcoming all suggestions. I just need them as far away from me as possible. But to be fair, they probably would have already given me a heart attack by then. I'd be tucked away peacefully in hell while they're still here, terrorizing the other patients in their care home in southern Argentina. They're always up to something. I was worried those 2 idiots would burn the place down while we were away for 3 weeks in Asia. But I was pleasantly surprised to see the opulent villas still standing at the end of the driveway when we returned to Sicily. That comforting feeling disappeared when I did, indeed, find the damage I expected, the moment I set foot in my office. What the? Tristano's sentence trailed off as we stared at my office that looked like it had been raided by filthy spring breakers from America. There were empty cans and bottles, candy wrappers, Pringles tubes, McDonald's bags, and discarded bits of food and crumbs everywhere.
Crumbs.
Lula hates crumbs. No wonder she was so depressed when we finally came home. She doesn't eat when she's depressed.
Find them.
My words came out through gritted teeth. I was restraining myself because of Lula, otherwise I would have gone on a killing rampage the moment I saw a condom hanging on the rim of my trash can. I had 3 weeks of work to catch up on, and my office was infested. It was like a horror movie, one based in a college where they have absolutely no discipline or regard for general hygiene. Colleges are breeding grounds for disease and life-changing mistakes. With a heavy sigh, I turned around and carried Lula down the hall to my father's office. They're dying today, Lula. I can't do it anymore. I looked down at the gray cat who stared back at me with her big eyes. I liked to think she was planning ways we could kill the twins together, Lula and Costa against the world. I knocked hard on the door of my father's office, heading inside when I heard his response. "You look angry," he stated drily, watching Lula and I approach his desk. I didn't think the first time I saw him after 3 weeks would be under these circumstances, but yes, I was pissed.
Hai visto cosa hanno fatto al mio ufficio?
Have you seen what they've done to my office?
No.
He shook his head, shifting his gaze towards the documents on his desk. Who gave them the key?
Non ho mai detto che potessero entrare mentre ero via.
I never said they could go in there while I was gone.
L'ho fatto. Te ne sei andato e io ho dato loro il compito di mantenere la tua posizione mentre eri via. Ciò include lavorare dal tuo ufficio.
I did. You left, and I gave them the task of upholding your position while you were gone. That includes working from your office. I scoffed, letting Lula down onto the floor. My father was barely looking at me now while I stood fuming across from him. I never thought the Don of the Sicilian Mafia would be so lax in his judgment. You had no right. You want them in La Famiglia so desperately? Fine, but they're your responsibility and they work from your office, not mine. Finally, his eyes snapped up to meet mine, and they were furious, as I expected. Watch your tone, Costantino. I'm still in charge. I'll watch my tone when you stop slacking. Do you know the amount of sensitive information and documents I have stored away in there? It's not a playground for them to come in and trash or have sex with random girls while I'm away. It was a harsh way to speak to him, but he needed to hear it. He's been slacking when it comes to the twins out of his guilt. In this life, you don't get time to feel guilty. It's only because of me, and maybe my brothers, that he's been able to wallow in his grief. I'll speak with Dash. No, you've done enough. I cut him off, walking over to the side cabinet where he kept ongoing business files. I'll handle it like I always do, I muttered, skimming through the titles on each folder. Most of them were deals I'd only need to check. Thankfully, nothing seemed to be urgent. The tension in the room began to simmer down the longer the silence dragged on. Costa, he sighed, leaning back in his chair. You need to give them a chance. They're never going to learn or come close to meeting your standards if you treat them like outsiders. They don't listen, Papa. I've tried, but I don't have the time to baby them. I love them, but I'm not a babysitter. I was only a few years away from taking over the Sicilian Mafia, all on my own. The last thing I needed were those two idiots giving me a headache while my father amped up my own training. I didn't have the space for any more drama. I had enough of it already with my immediate family. I'm not asking you to babysit them. Look, I know I've been absent during these last 2 months, but I've been here for you when you needed me. Be there for them. They just lost their father. They need this. They look up to you. They respect you. If they respected me, they wouldn't be throwing used condoms in my trash can. I felt my irritation rise up again at that image, especially when he tried to play on my emotions by making me feel bad for them. Actually, we used it as a water balloon. I turned to face the door when Aiden and Giovanni appeared with my brother, Tristano, behind them. Aiden and Gio were my younger cousins on my father's side, his younger brother's only sons. When his brother was killed by the Russian Bratva 2 months ago, my father shouldered the responsibility and the guilt. He believed the death was his fault, and he hasn't forgiven himself. Now he's taken on the twins as if they're his own children. At the young age of 18, they really did need the help to guide them through this life. I knew that, but I just didn't want to be the one to do it. Why did you need a water balloon in my office? I tried so hard to keep my tone neutral even when I had to say that outrageous sentence out loud. We couldn't find any real water balloons, so we stole a condom from your desk drawer. We put it above the door to fall on Luca. Luca was one of my trusted men in the Mafia. He was our enforcer, and a fucking good one. If there's a problem, Luca will have it handled before I ever even find out about it. Gio grinned, coming over to hug me as if we were best friends. I stilled under his touch, but a look from my father had me begrudgingly wrapping my arms around him. The apparent show of affection was enough to convince Aiden I would hug him too. So now I was stuck hugging another twin. Your office is being cleaned. Tristano nudged my arm as the twins headed over to the chairs across from my father's desk. How long will it take? I have shit to do. 10 minutes, relax. Tristano started sifting through the same files I was looking at. Business was always at the forefront of our minds. Where's your brother? We can discuss your trip since you're all here. My father seemed more relaxed than he did when we had our little disagreement a few minutes ago. Rocco? He's not home yet. He's still in Shanghai. Tristano grumbled.
Che diavolo ci fa ancora quell'idiota a Shanghai?
What the hell is that idiot still doing in Shanghai? The annoyance displayed by my father had the twins chuckling. He met a girl. My tone was dry as I opened a file on a business deal proposed by a sheik in Dubai. A girl? He's staying in Shanghai to see if she's the one. Tristano added, sharing the same annoyance that I had. The memories of yesterday morning were still burning in my head. My idiot brother came back to our hotel penthouse after his one-night stand to inform us that he'd be staying in Shanghai. After a heated argument and a vulgar exchange of words, we left Rocco to do as he pleased. There was no way of getting through to him anyway. Not when he's infatuated with a woman. He was the loose cannon out of the three of us. He did whatever the hell he wanted without any regard for the consequences. He hurt whoever he wanted, leaving everyone else to deal with the mess. The death of our uncle 2 months ago hasn't helped his recent behavior. Usually he's the fun-loving brother, but if he's in a bad mood, he's the one you need to avoid. Unless someone says something that triggers me, then I'm the one you need to run from. I only have a few triggers, but there's one that will automatically have me reaching for my gun. Somehow I didn't kill that drunk girl when she brought up my mother. Is 3 weeks really enough to think she might be the one? Aiden, the eldest twin by 5 minutes, asked with genuine curiosity. It wasn't 3 weeks. He met her the night before we were supposed to leave. My deadpan response had the twins cracking up again and my father shaking his head. He needs to sort himself out, and fast. I need you all performing at your best at all times for La Famiglia. Right now, Eduardo Accardi was guilt-ridden and emotional behind the scenes after his brother's death. But to anyone outside of the closest members of La Famiglia, he was still one of the world's most feared crime bosses. He was cold, hard, and ruthless when it came to business. He reserved his soft spot for family, and that's exactly how he taught his children to be. Family comes first. If someone doesn't have Accardi blood running through their veins, then they're not your true family. They might be close, but they're not your family. That's what my father taught us, anyway. It's how I've lived the last 28 years of my life, and how I intend to live the rest. La Famiglia will always come first. Well, if your brother is still screwing around in Shanghai, you can give me a rundown of your trip now. Fine, I sighed, tossing the latest file I was reading back on top of the pile. I headed over to the chairs across from my father's desk, which were currently occupied by the twins. Move. Make me, bitch. Giovanni smirked, causing a wave of annoyance to wash over me. I won't tell you again. I pulled out the handgun that was strapped to my hip, pulling back the hammer. Gio, move. Aiden stood up from his own seat, respectfully making way for Tristano to sit down. But Giovanni. My father finally warned, looking less than impressed at my cousin's defiance. Maybe my little rant earlier made him finally see sense? Fine, he huffed, standing to his feet. Watch yourself when you're walking through doors, Costa. You might have a condom explode on you if you're not careful. Giovanni bumped me with his shoulder as he passed me. Since he was heading over to the couch, he missed the slight smile that tugged at my lips. Cigar? My father opened his box of Cubans, sliding it towards Tristano and I. Tristano took 2 out and used his own lighter to light them, handing one to me. Soon the expensive air of cigar smoke filled the room as we got down to business. For the next hour or so, we discussed our trip to Asia and the few cities we visited in the past 3 weeks. Then we discussed all the business I'd missed since I'd been away from Sicily. My father was dealing with most of it, but he left the more mundane tasks for the twins. In other words, the easier stuff. My life is kind of hectic. I split my time between New York and Sicily. I'm constantly traveling between the two. As the Don, my father runs the Mafia from our main compound here in Palermo, Sicily. But I have complete authority over all the Sicilian Mafia's operations in America. That's why I'm in New York so often. I'm also training for my father's position, which has only added more pressure. And with my uncle's death 2 months ago, this shit has been a lot harder. Our conversation ended up taking another hour, with the final discussion being my upcoming trip to New York. I was only planning to be in Sicily for 4 days after our trip to Asia. As much as this constant moving around was exhausting, it was also good for me. It gave me less time to think about my life and all the loss we've faced. You'll be heading back to New York this week, see? Yes. I nodded. Tristano and I will be going. Rocco was supposed to meet us there, but I don't think he will. It's probably a good thing after what happened last time we were in New York, after the way he pushed that drunk girl. New York tends to bring out the worst in him whenever we have to go and visit her. It brings out the worst in all of us, actually. I'll send you a list of all the places you need to visit while you're there. It's only a few. It shouldn't take too much of your time. Don't worry about how long it takes us, Papa. Tristano responded softly, knowing that our visits to New York were always a sensitive topic for our father. Whatever you need done, we'll do it. And you'll need to take her some flowers. His voice lowered as he focused his attention back to his paperwork. We always do. I murmured, trying to block out those thoughts as best as I could. The room fell silent, and since my father wasn't saying anything else, we took that as our sign to leave. Come on. I nodded at the twins who'd been sitting quietly in the background, observing our talk. I picked up any folders and documents I would need, and since Lula was asleep, Tristano was the one to carry her with us back down the hallway to my office. My office was fresh and clean, just like I'd expected it to be when I first came inside a few hours ago. Tristano put Lula in her bed, then he headed to my alcohol cabinet. I took a seat at my desk while he grabbed for glasses, filling them all with whiskey. I couldn't help but smile when he handed the glasses to the twins. They always accepted them and drank with us, but they hated whiskey. They tried to hide it, but it was glaringly obvious. They were only 18 years old, so their palates weren't mature yet. I guess I could have been a good cousin by insisting they didn't need to drink whiskey just to impress us or to fit in. But it was funny to watch them drink it, so I never bothered. The two little shits deserved it for what they did to my office anyway. Over our drinks, I spent some time discussing upcoming business in New York with Tristano. Since Rocco was throwing a bitch fit in Shanghai, I doubt he'd be coming to New York. That meant his work would need to be split between the two of us. So, anything interesting happen while we were gone? I turned my attention to Aiden and Giovanni, who had been busy on their phones. The taste of the whiskey always shuts them up for a few minutes. Aiden glanced over at his brother, and then back at Tristano and I. Nothing. Nothing? In 3 weeks. Tristano rose an eyebrow at them. Giovanni laughed, nervously scratching the back of his neck. Well, we dropped a water condom on Luca. Your sister also came to visit for a few days. We kind of locked her in the basement while someone was being tortured. By accident, Aiden quickly added, knowing how protective we were over our sister's safety. We didn't mean to lock Riviera down there. It just kind of happened. The door locked and we couldn't find the key. If my father was here, I would have given him a pointed look, once again reminding him that they weren't La Famiglia material. They don't listen, no matter how many times they're told to concentrate. We're not asking about the stupid shit you guys pull around here. We're asking about business. We looked between the two of them, and soon they started having their own whispered dialogue as if we weren't able to hear them in my silent office.
Oh, gli dice.
You tell him.
Cagna, è stata una tua idea.
Bitch, it was your idea. You tell him. Non tu dash, know you.
Uno di voi me lo dica prima che vi rinchiuda entrambi in cantina per una settimana.
One of you tell me before I lock you both in the basement for a week. My cold tone had their eyes snapping over to me, and soon they were both stumbling to get their story out. Well, 3 weeks ago, the night you left for Asia, we were watching Black Panther in your office when Luca came in. This was before the water condom, by the way. Gio started the story, adding the kind of unnecessary information that made me want to smack him. He came in to tell us about the gossip at the ball in New York City a few nights before. Aiden explained, reminding me of the invitation I'd turned down a few days before we left for Asia. Those galas and events were a waste of my time. Getting into a room with a bunch of people I hate just didn't seem like a good use of my energy or time. My father only demands I attend if it's absolutely necessary. Even then, I try to have Tristano or Rocco go in my place. But usually we send some lower-rank members just to keep an eye on what's going on in the underworld. It's important to have eyes and ears absolutely everywhere. Oh shit. Did you hear that Miguel Diaz got into a fight with Damian Darmos? Gio suddenly exclaimed, turning to face his twin on the couch.
No. Why?
What happened? I heard they had a conversation, and then Miguel threw the first punch. It didn't last long. They got pulled apart pretty quickly. You think they're going after the same Cagna? Bitch. Aiden laughed, as usual, thinking all the world's problems revolve around sex. Probably. Gio shrugged before suddenly remembering where he was.
Oh, shit.
You wanted the business. Sorry, bro. Giovanni gave me a sheepish grin, leaning back into the leather couch to get comfortable. This kid was too freaking relaxed in my presence. He even called me bro. So, anyway, Luca came in to tell us that Viktor Kozlov is making moves to court. What's his name? Gio turned to Aiden for help, completely missing the way my entire body went rigid at the mention of Viktor Kozlov. The Greek guy, something Darmos. Nicholas Darmos. I gave them the first name that they were looking for. Yeah, him. Aiden nodded. Kozlov wants to marry his daughter. Kozlov wants to marry the princess of the Greek Mafia. I should have seen it coming. I didn't know much about her at all. Not many people did, since she wasn't directly involved in the criminal underworld. But if you knew anything about Nicholas Darmos, it was that he was power-hungry. That meant she was an asset to him. She was brought up to be the perfect princess, making her an ideal candidate for marriage. She was often seen at events and galas to support her family, but to my knowledge, she had very little to do with their business. At some point, I would have come across her if she ever handled their business deals. Instead, I only knew Julius and Damien. One of the only reasons I knew of her existence was because of her age. Being somewhere in her 20s makes her an ideal pawn in a marriage alliance, which Kozlov just figured out. Kozlov wants a marriage alliance with the Greeks? Tristano's tone had become harder at the gravity of the situation. The twins didn't know the Russian Bratva were the ones who killed their father. They didn't handle it well, and we all agreed it was better if they don't know that particular detail, while we figured out exactly what happened. We were still handling it. We didn't need them interfering.
See.
They met for the first time in public at that gala. Our guys there said that things went well. He even kissed her on the cheek. Gio explained while I shared a look with Tristano. You know that's not good for us. Tristano voiced, coming across a lot calmer than he actually was. Greece is too close to us. Kozlov securing a close ally in the Mediterranean was out of the question. So, what do we do? My brother looked to me to give him the answer, but I was beaten to it. Well, actually, we've already got a plan in motion. Aiden tentatively owned up. I'm sure this was the information neither of them wanted to be the one to tell us. What plan? I might regret asking that. I waited with bated breath, already preparing myself for the worst. Leaving two young idiots in charge wasn't my decision, and now my inability to overrule my father was going to come back, and we're breaking up their marriage. Gio grinned. Well, they're not marriage. They're never going to make it to the altar. And how the hell are you doing that? Tristano looked more curious instead of nervous. One thing we knew not to do was underestimate the twins when it came to screwing shit up. For once they'd found a genuine use for their useless talent. Well, thanks to our guys in the ball hall dash, it's a freaking banquet hall. We have some strong ideas of what they talked about. The twins suddenly launched into an explanation of the plan that they'd already put into motion. Most of it I couldn't undo now. It was too late. I knew they were only trying to help, and the logical thing was to indeed break up the potential alliance. But they didn't understand the risks they took. If Kozlov or Darmos found out they were behind it, the consequences were huge. Not only would they both retaliate individually, but if they did end up forming an alliance, they'd focus their joint power and resources towards us. But putting the risks aside, their plan was kind of good. I mean, would I have handled it differently? Abso-fucking-lutely. But would it work? Probably. It was effective. Stupid, but effective. Is that okay, Costa? What? We want to go to New York. We need to execute the final phase of our plan. Aiden licked his lips, nervously waiting for my answer. When? We need to be there by Saturday. Gio answered for the two of them. We need to be at the next gala. Kozlov and Darmos are both attending, so his daughter will likely be there. To crush any last hopes of an engagement, Aiden and I need to be there. We were already going to New York this week, so I guess there was no real reason why they couldn't come. Well, apart from the fact I might throw myself out of the plane after an hour of being trapped with them. They needed the chance to go out and prove themselves. It would be good for their character building and their confidence in this life. Plus, it was the one time their only talent of screwing things up could be used effectively. This was their plan, they had every right to see it through. I just needed to make some major changes to the rest of the plan if I wanted to protect them and our organization. But they couldn't go to that event alone either. They weren't ready to face so many criminals on their own, and they'd most likely expose their plan to everyone too. The stupid hope in their eyes while they stared at me as if I could make or break their dreams just pissed me off. I'm killing at least 50 people when I get the hell out of this room.
Fine.
But we're coming with you. Wait, you're coming? Gio jumped excitedly, now perched at the edge of his seat on the couch. Costa, you're really coming too? And now I feel guilty for being such a dick to them. They were kind of sweet, like stupid little puppies.
Yeah.
If there's room for us in your plan. I had to bite back every curse word that threatened to escape my lips. I didn't join other people's plans. They carried out my missions for me on my command. I just want to go back to Asia, man. Rocco was smart to stay there. Of course there's room for you, Costa. Aiden matched his brother's excitement, his eyes sparkling. Well, that's sorted then. The Accardis are going to New York. Tristano laughed, clearly sensing my dismay.
Shit.
Lula, save me. I looked over at Lula, who was sleeping peacefully, blissfully unaware of my impending torture. This was going to be hell. So, let's go through your stupid plan. Did you consider the risks you took? I poured myself another glass of whiskey, knowing I might need at least another 5 glasses for this conversation. First, I gave them both shit for doing something so stupid without consulting anyone first. I told them off because that had to be done. Then I explained the problems to them in a much calmer manner. It wouldn't be any use if I just yelled at them. They needed to understand the consequences of what could happen if it ever came out that they, or the Sicilian Mafia by association, were behind breaking up the alliance. Then we spent a long time fixing the rest of the plan. From now on, the rule was to not tell anyone outside that room what was going on apart from Rocco. We don't keep secrets from each other. My father didn't need to know, he'd be pissed at them, and that only meant one thing. He never let anyone get away with just a telling off. He treated Rocco, Tristano, and I all the same way. If we screwed up in business, we often came out limping with bruises and cuts afterwards. They'd just lost their father, they didn't need to go through that too. They just needed my help, and hopefully we could get it done without any consequences. Okay, so step 1 was the gifts. Gio grinned mischievously, recapping everything we'd discussed. Another one? I lifted my head to see Damien walking into Julius's office with a gift box in his arms.
Yep.
Another gift for Millie. He brought the box over to me on the couch while my brother watched on in concern. The last 3 weeks had been kind of strange. I didn't have much direct contact with Victor, who was apparently busy touring Europe for work. But my father received a confirmation we would be meeting again at another gala this weekend. The conversation was supposed to be longer this time. So we had no direct communication, apart from all the gifts he's been sending. At first, he sent me chocolates, flowers, Russian candy, scented candles, and a spa kit for my bathroom. It was all really cute until it just wasn't anymore. I soon started receiving expensive dresses and purses and jewelry. Most girls would appreciate it, but I was very clear that I wasn't in this marriage for the money. I wanted to be independent, which I told him. So yes, I took offense to all the expensive, superficial, materialistic gifts he was sending me. My mama told me not to throw a tantrum and to just gracefully and quietly accept the gifts. So I did, begrudgingly. Then I received a set of wooden spoons and a fine-bone china tea set. It was a little sexist, but my father insisted he was just being nice. Perhaps they're gifts for when you move into his house. This is what courting is all about, Millicent. He's making you feel wanted. That's the shitty explanation my father came up with. But that's where any haziness or confusion over his intentions cleared. After that, it was obvious as hell what he thought of me. A few days later, I received an apron for cooking in the kitchen. It had writing across the front, "Property of the Russian Bratva." At first I thought it was a sick joke, but the note stamped with Victor's signature confirmed it was from him. "Can't wait to see you looking pretty in my kitchen for me and my men. V." My brother confirmed the signature at the bottom was the one Victor always signed his documents with. Both Damien and Julius had no explanation for the gift I'd received. There wasn't much they could say to defend Victor with this one. After he already told me at the gala that I wouldn't be allowed to work, I don't know how he thought the apron would be funny. But, unfortunately, it didn't stop there. Now I'm sitting in front of my brother and my cousin opening up a box of lingerie from a Russian boutique. There were bras, thongs, suspender belts, one-piece bodysuits, and a baby doll set. Somehow, he managed to get my size spot on. What the hell? So, a style on tus aftos o skylas. Did that son of a bitch really just send you? My brother's sentence trailed off as I sifted through the lace and silk materials to reveal an item at the bottom. A collar. I'm going to kill him. Julius seated next to me, his eyes fixed on the black leather collar with my name etched on the front. Well, it was my future name, Millicent Kozlov. A collar for? I turned to look at Damien, who was angrier than I'd ever seen before. It's a symbol for a sexual submissive. He spoke through gritted teeth. He thinks I'm going to wear a collar for him? I scoffed, trying to block out the vulnerability I suddenly felt. I don't think anyone could understand the feeling. There was a high chance I could be sent away from my own family to live with a psychomaniac like Victor. I'd have no one to protect me if my future husband tried anything like this. You're not marrying him, Millie. My brother started pacing across the room while I sat there with the box on my lap. I'll tell him to his fucking face that he's dead to us. Julius Dash. He's right, Millie. Damien cut me off. He doesn't get to treat you like this and then expect a good working relationship. Never mind a fucking marriage. Well, you have to at least let me be the one to tell him at the gala. They both opened their mouths to protest, so I held up my hand to stop them. It's my right to do it. You can have a talk with him afterwards if you want, but I'm going to be the one to put that Russian bitch back in his place. I tossed the box of lingerie on the floor with a thud. I felt disgusted just looking at it. I wasn't going to be his personal whore, if that's what he thought. You're lucky he showed his true colors before any official engagement talks. Damien dropped down on the couch next to me with a heavy sigh. He has some balls if he thinks it's okay. I scoffed. What kind of woman would be happy to receive a collar with her name on it from a potential suitor? Don't you think it's strange? It was Julius who was the first to question the peculiar nature of it all. Why would he send you shit that he knows would only piss you off? Maybe because he's a narcissist? I murmured, resting my head on Damien's shoulder. This whole thing was blowing up in my face, and I'd only met Victor once. But I thought you got along with him? My brother frowned, sitting down behind his desk again. I thought I did. I mean, we hardly talked about anything other than the business side of all of this. But he seemed to be understanding of my situation. It was a little strange. Upon meeting him for the first time, Victor didn't seem like the type to send me a collar or an apron to claim me as his property. But first impressions can always be deceiving. It's not like someone is sending me gifts from Russia pretending to be Victor. I shook my head at the absurdity, and Julius agreed. Only a teenager would do something immature like that. I don't know any teenagers in the underworld, and especially none in Russia. And no one would be stupid enough to risk ruining a potential alliance between two criminal organizations. It's a declaration of war. So, after 3 months, I'm back to square one. My head was still resting on Damien's shoulder when I voiced my concern. Is it really this hard to find a husband? You sound like you want to get married. Julius scoffed, sifting through some documents on his desk. I don't want to, but I need to. The longer time goes on, the more forceful Dad is going to get. I don't want him to get to a point where he's willing to settle for just anyone. That won't happen, Mildred. Damien wrapped an arm around my shoulders in an attempt to comfort me. Your father loves you, and we'd never let anything like that happen. The only way you'd end up marrying a complete dick is if you were the one asking to do it. I would never do that. I know it's stupid, but I want a happy marriage. I want to fall in love.
I don't want to marry a dick.
I shook my head, swallowing down the emotions. Instead, I started thinking back to the list of names we'd already gone through. Most of them were bad news, which wasn't exactly unexpected in the criminal underworld. Who are her other options? Julius directed his question towards his future underboss. Everyone knew Damien had the best knowledge on their enemies, allies, and everyone in between. Accardi? He was the only other one we didn't cross off the list. Costa? Julius mulled it over for a second before nodding. He's okay. I'm not sure she'd fit into the Sicilian Mafia, but they're better than Kozlov and his collar. I don't want to marry him. I shook my head, remembering what Damien had told me about this guy. He's a man whore. I want a man who only wants me. Did I sound stupid? Probably. That's unlikely to happen, Millie. Sympathy flashed through my brother's eyes. Mistresses on the side are very common in the Mafia, especially in conservative organizations like the Sicilian Mafia. Well, then avoiding the Accardi family makes sense. We'll find someone else. It doesn't have to be him. Julius seemed like he wanted to convince me to reconsider, but thought better. Okay. We can approach some of our closest allies for a marriage, but it won't give us any added benefits, which is what your father wants. Damien suggested. It's the safest way. She's not a freaking commodity to include in a business deal. Julius spat the words out, leaning back into his chair. I'll handle my father if he gets angry. Dad won't be happy. You know he wants a new alien dash. I tried to remind him that my marriage was supposed to bring some kind of benefit to the Mafia, but he wasn't having it. I don't care. I'm not letting him sell you off to someone who might not be safe for you. Kozlov was a close call. Julius was the future leader of the Greek Mafia, so his opinion definitely held weight in these discussions. But the final decision would always come down to my father. Dad won't be happy if we don't consult him first about ending things with Kozlov. I voiced my concern and Damien sighed. Look, if we end shit with Kozlov this Saturday at the gala, then your father will have no choice but to go along with it. If he's pissed afterwards, we'll just show him the collar. Julius nodded in agreement, giving me a soft smile from his place behind his desk. Then we'll start looking for your husband all over again. This time, try not to pick a psycho. I muttered, glaring at the collar with disgust.